You've probably heard people say, just read the Bible and do what it says, or take the plain reading of the Bible. But what if the Bible wasn't written to you? What if it was written for you, but not to you? What if we've been reading it like a modern instruction manual or a book that is supposed to have the answers to all of our modern questions, when in reality, it's a collection of ancient literary texts inspired by God, but crafted in a world completely different than your own? Today, we're diving into a game changer: ancient literary genres, from royal inscriptions to war narratives to temple texts and law codes, and how these different type of genres that you read in the Bible can completely shift your perspective on how you understand the text, and why we need to shift our perspective. Let's go. Welcome back to the Word Room, where we make difficult Bible passages make sense. So let's jump into this concept of ancient genres from the ancient world that impact our reading of the Bible. Imagine reading a love poem like a science textbook, or treating a political speech like a how-to guide. You'd totally miss the point, and worse, you'd come away with the wrong idea. For example, you might read where it says, "I gave my heart to someone" in a love poem, and you might think they literally took out their physical beating heart that pumps blood in their body to give to someone else, because you're reading it literally like a science textbook. And the same thing applies to the Bible. If you read the Bible the wrong way, you can come away with the completely wrong idea. But you need to understand what the Bible is. The Bible is not one book. It's a library. It's multiple books written by dozens of authors on 3 different continents in 3 different languages, spanning over 1,000 years. And each author in different sections of different writings communicate with the different styles of their world. So if you want to read the Bible well, you've got to ask, what kind of text am I even looking at? Different genres can impact how you read a text. If we want to read the Bible faithfully and actually understand it, we need to learn how its original readers, the original audience, understood it, and how they understood those different genres that it's written in. Genres are important because they shape what kind of tools a writer uses. So, for example, war stories and royal inscriptions, well, those are going to be packed with hyperbole. It's about impact, not body count. You weren't supposed to count the bodies. Apocalyptic literature and visions, there's going to be symbolism everywhere. Beasts, horns, stars falling. These aren't literal predictions, they're pictures. Poetry of the ancient world, you're going to want to think in terms of parallel lines, not rhyming lines. Psalms, Isaiah, Lamentations, it uses this, and it's repetition in movement. Genealogies and temple measurements, numbers matter. 7, 12, 40. Those numbers are doing theological work. Prophetic oracles, dripping with irony and sarcasm. Isaiah straight up mocks idol makers. You cook your food with one half of the wood and worship the other half. It's mockery. These weren't random flourishes. These were tools for communication. And if you don't recognize the tool, you'll miss the point of the message. And the tools are specific to genres. So when you understand genre, your reading gets sharper. For example, you stop forcing Genesis 1 to be a science lab report, and you start seeing it as a cosmic temple text. You quit treating Proverbs as absolute guarantees and start recognizing them as wisdom principles. You stop decoding Revelation like a secret map of world events, and you start engaging with its symbolic vision of resistance and hope and new creation. You see, the Bible wasn't dropped from heaven in King James English specifically for you in the Western world in the 21st century. It came through real people in real places in a specific time, and it used the genres and literary tools of their world. When you read it on their terms, you don't lose meaning, you gain it. So ask yourself, am I reading the Bible the way it wants to be read? Or am I trying to force it to speak my language? Because that difference changes everything. So let's go through some of these genres and see how it affects your reading of the Bible. And if you are getting value out of this, click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, because more content like this is coming. And I'm starting to go live at least once a week to engage and answer your questions, so you don't want to miss it. So click that subscribe button. Now about these genres. 2 Kings 18 through 19. The Assyrian king Sennacherib invades Judah. Hezekiah is trapped. The Assyrian field commander mocks Israel's God. But then something crazy happens. Yahweh steps in, and the enemy army is wiped out overnight. Sounds epic, right? But look closer. The style matches royal inscriptions for kings, specifically from kings like Sennacherib himself. Third person boasting, divine favor claims for the king, hyperbole, staged dialogue. Sennacherib even uses this in his Prism, talking about this very account, using this same style. And he says, I shut up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage. That's the language of genre, not literal play-by-play. Saying he trapped Hezekiah like a bird in a cage is Assyrian propaganda, using hyperbole to exaggerate dominance while glossing over the fact that he actually failed to capture Jerusalem. This type of writing wasn't just reports, it's royal propaganda. They were political PR. And the Bible uses the same format. And it uses the format to say Yahweh wins the war, not Assyria. The genre transforms it from simply a report to a theological confrontation. Have you ever noticed that in the book of Kings and Chronicles, it repeats a certain phrase? In the Xth year of King so-and-so, he reigned Y years and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. That's Annals. That's the genre, Annals. It's a genre built for records, reigns, and rhythms. Ancient kings did the same, listing year-by-year campaigns to showcase control. But it would often use that form to showcase something else. Not just who reigned, but who obeyed God. So when you read this genre, what you need to be taking into account is not what each individual did in and of itself, but how that plays off of their obedience or disobedience to God. And that is the point actually trying to be communicated. Have you ever read Deuteronomy and wondered why it's so repetitive? Why the blessings and cursings go on for so long? That's an ancient treaty structure, especially the Hittite treaties. They include a historical prologue, laws, blessings if you obey, and curses if you disobey. Deuteronomy follows this pattern almost exactly. It's not just a legal code, it's about covenant. And it shows something profound. Israel's king is not Moses. It's not David, it's Yahweh. He's the suzerain, which is the sovereign. Israel is the vassal. It's not just law, it's showing relationship, bound by loyalty and trust and not just rules. You'll notice this genre using parallels, legal formulas, and symbolic rituals. You'll read in places like Psalm 82 and Deuteronomy, and you'll even see it in Job 1 and 2. God meeting with these seemingly supernatural beings, in Job called the sons of God. In Job, Satan, the adversary, shows up, and they debate Job's faithfulness. What is this weird scene? It actually comes in a specific type of genre of the ancient world, which is a divine council scene. You'll see this a lot in the Ugaritic texts. El, the chief god, sits with other deities to decide the fate of kings. The Bible taps into that genre, but it flips the script. Yahweh is not one among many. He presides as judge. In this genre, you're going to see the heavenly courtroom motif. You'll often see anthropomorphism, giving human attributes to God. And many times it'll have a visionary structure. What about Psalm 2? Very interesting psalm that we view as a messianic psalm. But it has a primary application in its day and a future application with the Messiah. Psalm 2 speaks, "You are my son, today I have begotten you," speaking of the king. David, with a prophetic picture of Jesus in the future, but it's speaking of David in the time it was written. That's a royal ideology text. In royal ideology texts, the king is associated with God's son, not biologically, but in authority. The Egyptians and the Mesopotamians were famous for doing this, associating kings with the sons of God for the purpose of showing they were divinely chosen to give them that authority. In 2 Samuel 7, God says to David, "I will be a father to him and he shall be my son." These aren't just nice words. It's political theology. It's legitimizing the rule and reign of David through divine speech. So when we read that, we think of kind of we are the sons of God, and we think of Christian theology. But when they read that in the ancient world, it was about showing the significance of David being the legitimate king. That's what it was about. This genre will use that divine sonship motif. You'll often see a poetic structure in this type of genre, which means non-literal motifs. And you often have a mythic allusion, something back to connect the king to creation. What about texts like 1 Kings 6 and 7? The temple of that passage is described in stunning detail. Cubits, gold, carvings, cherubim. But why so much architecture? Because this follows the temple inscription genre. Just like the Gudea cylinders of the past, where kings describe exquisite detail of their temples. Why? Because the temple's imagery has symbolic meaning, linking it as a cosmic center. The Bible paints the temple as heaven's blueprint on earth. It's not just a building, it's a new Eden. Ever read Leviticus and feel like it's all repetition? If anyone brings a burnt offering, over and over again it says this. That's liturgy. Ritual language. It's supposed to repeat because it forms memory and identity. Another example of this liturgical writing, Psalm 24. You know where it says, "Who will ascend to the hill of the Lord?" This type of writing had call and response, where there would be rhetorical questions and then a response to it. The structure wasn't just religious, it was immersive. It was supposed to call you into the text. These texts include call and response, parallelism, and ritual language, things related to purity and purification. Again, Psalm 24, "Who may ascend the hill of the Lord?" He who has clean hands and a pure heart. It's purification language. You'll see this throughout the text. What about omen texts and divination? Is that in the Bible? Well, yeah. Pharaoh has dreams, skinny cows and fat cows. Joseph interprets it. Famine is coming. That's omen text and divination language. Just like the omen texts of Mesopotamia, if X, then Y. Ezekiel even describes Babylon's king reading liver shapes to decide which city to attack. That was a common motif in omen literature. Joshua speaks of the negative omen related to when the sun and moon would stand still. I have a video on that if you want to know what it actually means. Link to that will be in the description. The Bible engages with this world of divination and omens, not to endorse it, but to show who really controls the future and creation. There's a type of literature called apocalyptic. These are types of literatures that were meant to be recited to ward off evil, and that's actually in the Bible. Psalm 91, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High." It's meant to be quoted and remembered and prayed. Numbers 6:24 through 26, the priestly blessing for protection. It reads like a prayer, but it functions like an amulet. Repetition, divine names, protection promises, all in this type of literature. The Bible doesn't shy away from spiritual danger. It directly addresses it. Just a couple more just for fun, so stick with me, because this maybe will help you understand the law. In Exodus 21, it says if a man digs a pit, very, very specific scenario. The reason is because the law in ancient law codes were tied to stories, just like the Hammurabi Law Code. If this, then this. But it's tied in narrative story form. Ancient people didn't separate law and story. They embedded ethics in lived examples. The laws were not what we think of today. It was rooted in story because it was not a statute, as in the modern legal sense. but rather it was more like wisdom literature about justice. Today, law codes like the US legal and civil codes are prescriptive. They define the crime and assign the penalties. In the ancient Near East, though, law collections like the Code of Hammurabi, the laws of Eshnunna, Middle Assyrian laws, and of course biblical law, they were not enforced line by line. They were not case law, nor were they intended to be a comprehensive legal system. These codes were more like moral instruction and exemplary scenarios meant to shape a judge's discernment. They showed how a wise, God-fearing ruler should act in the face of complex moral situations. Laws were principles wrapped in narrative. Remember, Torah means instruction. Torah, the law, means instruction. It doesn't mean legislation. How about one more? Joshua 10 says they left none alive. 1 Samuel 15, they killed all of the Amalekites. That's not genocide. It's actually genre. Hyperbole was standard in war texts. From Egypt to Moab, victory meant exaggeration. The point isn't body count. It's that Yahweh brings the victory against the odds. I have a video in the description that deals with this very in depth if you're interested. I can go on and on, from apocalyptic literature to epic narrative to chronicles to love poetry and to city laments and on and on. Understanding these give you a grasp on the intended meaning. On my Patreon, I've included notes about this with a chart with these and other genres that include literary tools common to each genre, examples from within the Bible and from other cultures that use these genres. Check it out at patreon.com/thewordroomapologetics if you're interested in supporting the channel. If you're interested in understanding Genesis 1 through 3 in its original cultural context and genre, check out my playlist right here on that. And if you want to know how the sun standing still is actually drawing on ancient Omen texts, click here. See you next time. And worse, you come along. Really, Cat?